Good Saturday morning and happy July 4th. So I finally saw the movie Obsession, which a lot of people were obsessed with, right? What a cliche. Not the movie, but just, that expression. This is a movie that was made by a couple of YouTubers and some lesser known actors, and they did a really good job, actually. It made a lot of money on a small budget, which is what you love to see, especially with horror movies. That's really the only genre, or one of the only genres, that can get away with a low budget. And there's a lot of things to say about the movie. First of all, the simplicity of this movie is why I think it's so effective. It's so scary because of the simplicity. It's not a perfect movie. This is a movie that gets a lot better after you've seen it and things start to make sense. And not just that they start to make sense, but you start to kind of understand some of the decisions that were made in the writing, the awkwardness of the millennial writing. Like, the writing is kind of bad, but maybe intentionally so. I think it's intentionally designed to be a little cringe. But objectively, like, the movie and the first part of the movie, the first 20 minutes or so, it's pretty cringe and it's not very eventful. And I suppose that's sort of kind of for the build-up of what's to come. They build up to a lot of very suspenseful and disturbing stuff in this movie. And so it gets a lot better the more you're watching it. So the pacing in that sense is very good. But there's a whole lot of nothing happening in the beginning of the movie. But in the classic horror film fashion, those slow build-up parts are very effective in making you think, okay, what's actually going to happen here? So I think the unpredictable nature of this movie is really good. You know that something bad's going to happen, but you don't really know what. And there's a lot of very interesting reveals. There's a lot of very smart reveals. When he turns and he looks, first we see his face, and we're not sure what he's looking at or why he's looking that way. And then you see the giant duct tape on the door, which is very interesting, very creative, I guess. And then when the other girl, Sarah, is reading the note on the lunchbox, but we haven't seen what's on the other side of it, and then she's reading that phrase, and it takes the audience a moment, and the character, they're like, what the hell does this note mean? And then it shows us what it means. There's a lot of very interesting, very clever scares in this movie. So the simplicity of not too many jump scares and not too many crazy effects, just a lot of physical acting. The actress, Indy Navarrete, she does a lot of things with her face, and she does a lot of things with her body. There's a lot of physical, like, comedy / horror that she does. And I guess that was probably part of the direction. I don't know. But I would say her performance is probably the best in the movie, although I also like the main character, the actor that played the main character, Michael Johnston, I think. Something like that. And he does a really good job, too. And I like the other actors too. I like the actress that plays Sarah. I think she's really pretty too. She was a pretty lady, so it's a shame what happened to her in the movie. And then the guy who plays the other guy friend, he does a good job, but he's not really all too relevant in the movie. But he has his moments. There's a couple scenes with him and a couple shots with him where he's showing his frustration and his jealousy, and it's kind of interesting to see. Which we have to bring up kind of the main theme of this movie. It's a very interesting movie because it's a movie that you think about more after you watch it, not because of like how shocking it is, but there's a couple of themes going on here that are really interesting. So it's actually more of a psychological horror movie in a sense when you think about what does this movie really say about love and obsession, especially in the modern world. Now, this movie's not really that original in terms of its storyline. Like, So you have a lot of people that need to pump the brakes about, oh, is this the best horror movie? Like people will watch one horror movie. People will watch one movie or play one video game and ignore the entire history of the rest of the medium. Like these are tourists. They're saying like this is not the best horror movie ever made, but it's actually, I would say in the upper echelon, certainly of modern horror movies, as far as, again, the simplicity of the movie, which they achieved a lot of that on a tight budget, small number of locations, small number of actors, and a lot of the tension is just created again through the dialogue and acting and pantomiming and stuff like that. So actually, a lot of times a low budget helps a movie because it makes you think on your feet, and you have to work within the constraints, and the simplicity of a story is usually the best way to get your point across. So it blows a lot, maybe not all, but it blows a lot of the elaborate horror movies out of the water. But this type of theme has been played before. There have been other movies. There's literally another movie called Obsessed. Not quite Obsession, but this even title has been used before. And that was a movie starring Beyonce. Probably not anywhere near as good as the movie, but that was, I remember that back in like 2009. And then that movie was compared to Fatal Attraction. So you've had plenty of movies where you've had the female stalker. You've probably had more movies with the female stalker than the male stalker. Because I think actually women are scarier than men. And there's a lot of people that don't understand why that is. But I think another great choice was making the main villain of sorts. People are arguing who's really the villain, but there's no question that part of the villain is Nikki in this movie, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's obvious that she's the villain. She is the one that's really the cause of everything. It doesn't matter that in the context of the story. I suppose context matters, right? That somebody made a wish, their wish was granted, but it didn't turn out right because maybe the wish wasn't from the heart. Maybe it wasn't an honest wish all the way through. But I think there's some elements of Nikki's character, like maybe she's not a bad person, but she's also, there's some things about her that aren't perfect either. She was sleeping around with one of her friends, and then whatever happened there, maybe it was the other guy's fault why they didn't commit to a relationship. She was sleeping around a little bit, and she was kind of playing the guy along. She was kind of playing bear along a little bit, even without the possession. I think the metaphor of the movie is about a little bit about the male loneliness epidemic, but women play a big role in that for how they lead men along. They try to lead men astray, toy with men's feelings. Men are clearly more naturally romantic than women by far, and women will play like they're into romance and all those things, but a lot of women are very good at manipulation, or we give them credit for manipulation. So I think she's doing a lot of manipulation, whether or not you want to chalk it up to an evil spirit. And there's a lot of realism in the relationship there. And then you have a woman like Sarah. Sarah seems like a really good person, kind-hearted, and she seems like she would be a loyal woman. So I think the contrast with what Sarah provided, Sarah probably would have been the true love in the relationship, someone who's very selfless in the relationship. But he ended up falling in love, I think, with the wrong woman. I think the Nikki character, there's a stupid scene in the movie, in the early part of the movie, where it's a very contrived moment. I don't think it's necessarily a terrible moment in the movie, but I think there's a lot of cringe and awkward moments in the movie. And there's a scene right before he drives her home where she's like, "Can I borrow some money?" And then she goes and gives it to a homeless person. It's like, oh, she's an angel. She's a goody two-shoes. I don't think she is. I don't think she's a terrible person, but I don't think she's a great person either. I think she's one of those girls that sleeps around and leads her male friends along and kind of toys with him and kind of fucks with him. They said that she friend zoned, which, it's her right to friend zone the guy. But I think it's clear that she clearly knows that he's attracted to her. And neither one of them approached that situation like adults should have. They were both kind of afraid to talk about it directly, which might have solved some of the problems. Now, there's definitely some really bad characteristics of the main characters, his decisions in the movie. And I see a lot of people saying, well, he should have reversed course again. I mean, outside of the context of the movie's rules where, he needs to kill himself in order to, get over it, or for it to end. Yeah, if this was a real world situation, I don't even know how to apply it to a real world situation with the possession part of the equation. But he very clearly was being victimized, and unjustly so. But I think the metaphor is when you're really obsessed with somebody, like, if it's for good reasons, then obviously you just want them to love you back. And obviously this movie takes it to the extreme because it's a horror movie. It's going to be an exaggeration. But the stalking and the jealousy and all those things, like, everybody that's experienced love is going to experience at least the jealousy part. There are plenty of movies that have covered this topic before. Vertigo is a great movie, although it's not a horror movie. Vertigo covers the topic of obsession and how a lot of love and obsession is just in an idealized form. You don't necessarily love the person, you love the idea of them. And that's kind of the reality with a lot of the world that we live in. The celebrity worship, also the hatred of certain people that you've never met because the media says you need to hate them. A lot of this stuff is all based in the brain and it's not real. So what is real love? Well, obviously you want the person to be there. Obviously you want them to be loyal to you. And there's some moments in the movie where it seems like these two are genuinely in love, or it appears that they are. It appears to be sort of idyllic. And a lot of people have said, well, maybe the main character doesn't actually understand what love is. Maybe he's like a psychopath or something. Maybe he only understands, maybe he only wants attention, and that's a good analysis, I think. But I don't like the takeaway that people are making that, you just can't love somebody because that's too creepy. That's dumb. There's definitely a problem with male loneliness and men tap dancing for women and men going to the extremes for women. But that's because of the times that they live in, where women have ridiculous standards about choosing men. And a lot of women don't actually, again, want romance and want the man's affection. They just want attention. So women are just as bad as men. Women can be just as bad of stalkers as men. And, it's one of those things where it's an interesting dynamic where when you want somebody and when it's mutual, it's usually good. Like right at the end of the movie, finally, there's like this mutual attraction for one reason or the other. Briefly, there's this mutual attraction between the two. And then, of course, the irony is the guy dies. So maybe he finally got his wish granted in a sense. In some weird way. And so, when it's a mutual attraction, it's all well and good. You don't expect in the real life to have a crazy girlfriend that's doing all the stuff that she's doing. But that story's been told before. It's just like hyper exaggerated to make you feel a little cringe and a little awkward and a little bit of self-reflection of, well, maybe sometimes you just got to let the obsession go. But again, I think that there's definitely some elements of realism in there. I think he just went after the wrong girl and for the wrong reasons, perhaps. But I don't think putting the blame all on the main character solves anything. There are plenty of women that have threatened violence against other people out of their need of possession. So the only intelligent conversation about this movie is to look at what both men and women do out of insecurity. And some of that's natural, right? Some of that's normal. You just, but you have to have communication. I think the lack of communication is what leads to pretty much all the problems that we have as a society. Um, but there's no question if you really love someone, even really loving someone is going to lead to jealousy and insecurity, and you just have to work on those things with the person. Um, but putting all the blame on the male incel, like I don't even believe the male incel is really a function of modern women more than it is the problems of modern men. A little bit of both, right? There's some blame that some men have because we kind of enable, not we, but there are men that enable women to play their games, to have OnlyFans and to have all these other things where they can just extract money from men and the man gets nothing in return. So you kind of can't blame some men for being desperate and for having desperate ideations. It's the modern world that we live in. The romantic, they say romance is dead. It's not because of men though. It's really largely due to women and the fierce competition that we now have because of these ridiculous standards that women have. It's not enough to be a nice guy. I mean, imagine Bear and Sarah got together. They probably would have had a nice relationship because Sarah was definitely into him. Maybe I think there's some issues with him as a character. And I think a lot of the cringe and awkwardness of the movie uh, was intentional to make him look kind of bad, but I don't think that he's 100% to blame for the stuff that happens in this movie. I think he's a victim as much as he is maybe someone with some degree of bad intentions. Like the scene where she asks him to kill her. Like obviously it's a ridiculous situation if you apply it to real life, but he was very upset in that moment when he didn't get the response that he wanted. So yeah, like he's definitely not, like again, in the context of the movie, it's a bit crazy to say that it was because he obviously had his moments where he tried to put things back to normal, but he wasn't able to. But he obviously also was sort of in a weird fucking way enjoying the negative attention. I don't know. It's a weird movie. I think anyway, in terms of the technical filmmaking, it's a pretty good movie. There's some good shots and some good placement of the actors and the blocking and that sort of thing. I don't like the term blocking, but that's what people use. The blocking was good for the most part. I think, again, the congeniality of the actors, they did a really good job. The Navarrete woman, she has a nice smile, and they use that to a creepy effect, and they inject a lot of comedy and a lot of horror together. And it's a simple movie, keeps it simple, but that's what horror movies are about. And it really does have a strong element of psychological horror. I don't like some of the jump scares and some of the crazy sound effects that they use. They're effective, but I think they're a little bit cheap. But not as cheap as a lot of horror movies do. At least there's some rhyme and reason to the jump scares, and they come out of nowhere. They're really unexpected. And some of them are really creative, like the one where she just kind of backs up in slow-mo. But I don't really appreciate the weird sound effects that they inject that are not diegetic. Like those are kind of annoying, especially when you're watching the movie with headphones. But it's an effective horror movie, and it's definitely startling in some aspects. But I think as an analysis of this movie, it does make you think a little bit about how modern romance is so toxic, but it's not one-sided. And I think that's the takeaway. Like, I really don't want people to look at this movie and say, romance. I mean, romance is kind of dead, but this isn't some. It isn't just a modern lens about the romantic dichotomy. Like, this is definitely the way it's been really throughout history, but it's just that it's to an extreme now because of all of the modern obstacles of dating. Like it's really hard in the Western world to have a partner that really wants to be there for you and be loyal. Because there's not just realistic standards and distractions in life, and you know, there's going to be a little bit of obsession in any form of love. Like that's the idea. Like this movie shows it to an extreme, but there's always going to be a little bit of obsession, as long as it's a healthy obsession where it's accepted by both parties and it doesn't interfere with anybody else. As long as it's like reciprocated in a healthy manner, like not to an extreme. But that's what it is. I mean, love is about being devoted to somebody, and the whole idea about loving someone more than anybody else in the world. I mean, that is real. That is kind of real. You know, the idea that you're gonna just, I mean, you try to interact with other people and help other people, but you're putting your family first. You know, if you're a good person, you put your family first. Some people are all about their family. They wouldn't care if they were alone on an island with the other person. You know, that is real. Um, but it's just very interesting, kind of getting the taste of your own medicine. If if all you have is, oh, I want this person as an object and nothing more, you know, obviously that is the wrong type of, if you can even call it affection. It's just very interesting the way that it's framed, really trying to make the man feel guilty about what he wanted. And in that sense, I'm not going to say the movie is woke, but that I think is wrong, because again, there are plenty of movies and plenty of examples of real life of women having stalkerish behavior and obsessive behavior. And again, when it's reciprocated, usually things calm down a bit, right? So it's more so that it's almost from the perspective of, oh, I don't actually want this. Be careful what you wish for. This is more than I bargained for, as opposed to this is some unnatural thing. Like, like just be chill about it, sure. But I mean, you do have intense love affairs. They get a little bit crazy because that's what love is. It's, you can call it a little bit of an illusion, what have you. That really is what it is, and we just kind of have to grapple with that. But the modern dating trends are the problem here, and I don't know how we're gonna I don't know how we're going to navigate those successfully. Um, but the movie is thought provoking, and the movie is effective as a horror movie, and it's a lot better than the big budget Hollywood movies and Hollywood products are doing. So I think it's a good movie. I didn't like it at first as I was going through it, but I liked it the more I went along, and it has really good, effective moments of tension, and it's thought provoking. Um, and it's not the only thought provoking horror movie, of course, but of the ones I've seen in the last 5-10 years or so, it's pretty good. So Obsession's good. Is there some realism? Yeah. But I think the conversations surrounding it are a little bit too myopic. It's definitely, who is the villain of the movie? There's more than one.